Hello and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Dara, and today we are starting by obviously taking off any of the labels. I think this is a really important step that gets overlooked. I've seen flower shops just not bother with taking off the stickers on the bottom of the vase. Obviously, the price stickers that they come with get taken off, but the ones on the bottom, it's just a little detail that I think makes a big difference. And then I always go in and either remove or add my own felt footing. These are the 3/8 inch felt pads, and I secure those on with Loctite super glue. You can find all of these items in my Amazon store linked below, as well as the entire flower recipe coming up. So I just put a tiny little dollop on there on each individual felt pad, and I always match the felt pad to the vase so that it's a very seamless and hidden mechanic. Then I'm going in with the chicken wire grid. This is something I always do for all of my arrangements. I do not use Oasis floral foam or even agro wool. I used to use Oasis floral foam. That was one of my big things. And then I'm using these Oasis, actually brand, wire cutters to cut the chicken wire. This is galvanized chicken wire, and that means essentially it will not rust inside of your vase. So when your client gets the arrangement and they go to throw the flowers away a week later, it's not going to have a bunch of rust on the inside of the vase. And I'm taking that chicken wire and stretching it out. What this does is allows more space between each little grid there for all of the stems to fit. This is just particular to the style arrangement that I'm making. This is a Pave arrangement, and so we want those little honeycomb grid pieces to be as open as possible so we can fit as many stems as possible inside the vase. I go in first with a bottom layer, and then once I have that layer in, I go in with the top layer. This creates a support structure that is open on the interior of the vase while still giving us the support that we need to have all of the stems as well as the height that we need in this vase. If you were to just bunch all of this chicken wire up as you would for a loose style arrangement, that would not work. So then we secure this chicken wire grid in with the 1/4 inch waterproof Oasis floral tape. And again, I am matching this tape to the vase so that it just becomes another little hidden mechanic there. And then I also secure that tape on the upper brim or lip of the vase. And then to secure that crisscross that I made over top, I secure it on the upper lip where both of that crisscross tape meets so that it holds it all down nice and secure. And once I finish that up, for some reason I always think this is kind of like, when you're making a pie crust, you're like pinching the ends, except you really want this to be super flat. So then after you have that all laid down, you go in with your hands and really smooth out that tape so that there are no holes, so that no water gets in. Because if water does get in, it has the potential to lift up that grid. Then I go in, add my flower food, add the water, and then we are ready to design. When I'm working with hydrangea, I always start with hydrangea because it usually is the largest flower that I'm working with. I take off all of the damaged foliage or any foliage that I just don't want as part of this design. I cut off any of the damaged petals, any little laterals or umbels that are dead. And a lot of this you can get away with your hands. As you can see, I'm going through and kind of grooming those stems with my hands. And then other times, depending on the stiffness of those stems, you may need to use Zenport shears, which are a really good tool for that type of fine detail work. There's a very fine needle nose point at the end of those blades that is really excellent for detail work. And then, of course, I clean up all of the nodes. on every stem so that every time you insert a stem, and if you need to take the stem out, it makes it super easy. And if you were to leave the nodes on, it would be really difficult to get the stem in, and if you needed to change its placement, difficult to get it out. So really important step, every single stem gets edited like that. Cleaning every single node, not every single node, but any of the nodes that would be submerged underwater, or any of the nodes that would go down into the grid. If they're on the upper part of the stem, that's okay to leave on, because you do want to minimize the amount of handwork or every single cut that you're making, because then it's just, honestly, it's extra work for you. And if you have 100 stems that you're working with, that's 150, 200, 300 extra little actions. So when you really break it down like that, very efficient. Carnations, oh my God. Antique, I don't think that this variety was called antique. This was not dyed. This is a naturally, I believe, hybrid carnation. I'm gonna see if I can find that name. Again, the entire recipe to make this arrangement, if you want to replicate it, will be in the description box below. And what I do with these carnations is I create groupings. For this arrangement specifically, I wanted big groups of carnations. Normally it'll just be like 2 to 3 in each grouping, but in this one I wanted a lot. So I got 2 bunches, which would be 50 stems. Not all 50 stems made it into the arrangement. I think I had maybe like 15 or something left over, but as you can see, I'm creating groupings of like at least 5 to 8, and I think some of these groupings had 10. As you can see here, I wasn't really feeling the placement of these hydrangea. I felt like they were way too high, and because they were too high, I wasn't going to be able to, basically I didn't have enough product to make the arrangement as large as that stem was sitting. So once I have my groupings on the outer periphery of the arrangement set up, I then go in and do the top of that. So that's what I'm doing here with these carnations. Again, creating another grouping while also leaving space for where I'm envisioning the next group of flowers to go in. I think I had about maybe 8 or 10 varieties of stems in here. So while I'm designing, I'm also envisioning the other things that are going in. These stunning, like espresso chocolate ball mums, very cool, very dense, short heads. So not these huge ball chrysanthemums, but like nice little golf ball sized, kind of like flat heads. Really cool. Very cool texture for this arrangement. This I had 10 stems of, so I'm then creating at like groupings of I think 2 to 3, which then I was able to place around the arrangement as another accent flower for then the other flowers to sit on top of. For each individual stem, all of these flowers were processed and all of the greenery was removed beforehand. So there's not a ton of editing going on in this arrangement, or this video rather, but the foliage and anything that I didn't want visible, I just go ahead and take that off. And of course, anything that would be submerged in water, you will need to take off as well. Ideally, you have about a day or so before you design your arrangement to process, which would be to take off any of the greenery, any of the nodes, let the flowers hydrate, and then the next day they will be a little bit open and ready to design with. And in most cases, most flowers will look the way that they're going to look for the duration of the arrangement after being processed. So that's why that's a really important step for making floral arrangements, because then you get a better idea of what the flowers will actually look like. Some flowers need a little bit of massaging in the arrangement, and this takes time. So with every stem that I'm placing down in, I'm not just going in and setting it flat down. As you can see here, I'm massaging that hydrangea out so then it sits in front of that Queen Anne's lace, and that the flower is going in at a particular angle. I'm doing that here as well. That Queen Anne's lace is now sitting behind the chrysanthemum, and I'm arranging the carnation around it as well. And again, the same thing. I'm massaging that all in to make sure that the angle at which it's sitting, this is a really good example here. So with this carnation, and then I go in, and you see how it's kind of looking smushed on that left side of the carnation. Then I will go in and massage those little umbels out, so then it looks like a beautiful pattern behind that carnation. And every single stem that you insert, you do that with when you're making this style arrangement. If it's a loose style arrangement, it's actually not really that necessary, because that style doesn't really require it. It's hard to describe, but when we are creating a more compact look, every little gesture that we do with the flowers really makes a massive impact on the overall look. That's why I love creating the style arrangement, because it's actually quite challenging to do, and the more you practice it, the better you get, and the more satisfying it becomes. Because, you know, this is just my opinion, and I love wild arrangements. I think they're super stunning, but they're not challenging to me. I feel like almost anybody can make a wild arrangement. Oh my God, favorite rose. You can buy this in my store if you're in Los Angeles. This is a secret rose. The name of it is Series on my website. I sell it by the 2 dozen, so 2, 4, 6, 8, however many dozen you want, but always buy 2 dozens. Stunning, super gorgeous, does not come across accurately in this video, but it is like a mauve rainbow. It is spectacular, like the softest muted lavenders that fade into like weird different cool and warm beige tones, and then this like hypnotizing copper color in the center. Sometimes, not every single stem has that copper effect to it, and every single rose has a slightly different saturation to it. It's so special. I am obsessed with this rose. This particular rose doesn't open up, at least in my experience, for the 50 times I've had it in the studio. Never has it opened, but I believe that is the charm of this particular rose. It stays like a nice tight swirl, and so I like to do little compact pave arrangements with just the roses themselves. Such a special, stunning rose. Oh my God, I'm obsessed. And then this Vanda orchid, I'm holding it up to the arrangement to see if it's gonna work, and indeed it did. So I then tubed about 4 blooms, and if you need to see how to tube and stake orchid blossoms, click the video in the upper right hand corner here. That is linked up there for you if you need to see how to do that and what products I use to do that. And then, like all of the other flowers, I go in, I make a little base layer, and then I put another layer, if you will, on top of that. So it's important to envision where you're putting your flower and envision the base, and then what will go on top of that. And same thing again on the other side of the arrangement. I'm taking that Vanda orchid, placing it down. And then I think on this one, I actually did it the opposite way. So I created the front of the flower first and then put the base down. And then I kind of arranged those flowers to make the pattern that I wanted to see. One of them is out at a 45 in one direction, and another is at a 45 degree in the other opposite direction. So it kind of creates this cool little crisscross look. Don't be surprised when you're arranging that you have to keep editing and keep moving flowers around, especially with the style arrangement. Because you really have to kind of get the measurement of each stem exact for it to sit properly in the arrangement. So flowers will shift as you're designing, and that's perfectly okay. So as you can see, I have all of my layers down, but now I'm just going back in and adding more layers. So I had my first layer of Queen Anne's lace down, and then because I had more left over, I wanted to see where this would continue to add more texture and depth. End of the arrangement already. That is so crazy. This is my favorite new fine mist spray bottle. I am using the FLORA LUX Finishing Touch Spray. This is a wax-based sealant that keeps flowers super fresh and happy for the duration of their life. It really helps, adds a lot of life. And you can find all of these tools and materials in my description box below. Thank you so much for watching today. I can't believe how fast that tutorial went. Let me know if you have any questions. If you want to see more videos like this, please leave your suggestions below. Thank you so much for joining me today. Do you have any other requests? I also just published a couture bridal bouquet pricing video, so if you want to see that, go ahead and click this link, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks again, and see you next time.